different weight atoms of the same element are known as isotopes. Some isotopes are stable. They do not change spontaneously into other elements. Others, because of an imbalance in their nucleus, are unstable and eject particles or rays as they decay to a stable form. These emissions are called nuclear radiation, and the unstable atom a radioisotope.
Radiation is invisible, but its effects can be devastating. On September 30th, 1999, a nuclear criticality incident occurred at the Tokaimura nuclear plant in Japan, exposing 3 workers to lethal doses of radiation. One worker would survive for over 83 excruciating days before succumbing to his injuries. In 1999, the combination of corporate greed and disregard for worker safety will have caused the unimaginable suffering of one man. Hisashi Ouchi's prolonged and agonizing death from nuclear poisoning forced governments and companies to prioritize the safety and well-being of workers in the nuclear industry and to reevaluate the consequences of nuclear energy. Japan had few natural power generating resources and accelerated its nuclear energy program in an attempt to lessen its dependence on expensive imported energy. The process needed to be very precise, each step conducted carefully and timed perfectly, each element mixed in exact proportions. By 1999, the officials of JACO started experimenting with skipping some steps when dealing with enriched uranium to see if they could produce nuclear fuel faster. Because when it comes to creating nuclear energy, are safety procedures really that important? By that September, the plant was facing tight deadlines. Workers had already missed their last deadline, even while cutting down safety procedures. On the morning of the 30th, Hisashi Ouchi, along with his co-worker Masato Shinohara and their supervisor Yutaka Yokokawa, decided to try one more shortcut. Despite the fact that they all had years on the job, none of them had been trained well enough to know what the horrific effects of doing the wrong thing could be. Around 10 a.m., the 3 workers started to mix the enriched uranium with nitric acid. However, instead of using automatic pumps that would mix exactly 5.3 pounds of uranium into a container designated for that purpose, they used their hands to pour not 5.3 but 35 pounds of uranium into steel buckets. Suddenly, a blue flash exploded across the room. Lethal amounts of radiation were now leaking everywhere. The men realized they had made a critical mistake, but it was too late. Ouchi experienced immediate intense pain as well as vomiting. After not being able to breathe well, he fell unconscious. The workers were immediately transported to the hospital. Later on, doctors found that Yokokawa had been exposed to 3 sieverts of radiation, as he was the furthest away at his desk. Shinohara had received 10 sieverts, and Ouchi, who was standing directly over the bucket when the reaction had happened, had absorbed 17 sieverts of radiation. This officially meant that he had been exposed to the highest amount of radiation a human had ever observably received. To understand exactly how extreme this was, the safe level of radiation for humans to absorb within 1 year is 100 millisieverts. Shinohara, who had absorbed 10 sieverts, lasted for 7 months in the hospital before dying of lung and liver failure. Yokokawa, after a long hospitalization, survived the ordeal, though he ended up facing negligence charges. Ouchi had no such luck, and would not only die, but would experience one of the most brutally painful and slow deaths in history. Ouchi had received severe radiation burns on his entire body, and his eyes were leaking blood. His white blood cells were almost completely gone, and all of his major organs were severely damaged. The nurses placed Ouchi in a special ward to prevent him from contacting hospital-borne pathogens, as his immune system was basically non-existent. However, they soon realized that the extent of damage to Ouchi's body was way beyond anything they could deal with, and 3 days later, he was transferred to the University of Tokyo Hospital. In his first week there, doctors tried experimental cancer treatments to replenish his white blood cells, as well as almost constant skin grafts and blood transfusions to lessen the severity of his burns. The process was unbelievably torturous for Ouchi. After just a week at the hospital, he begged the doctors to let him go. Reportedly, he had cried out, "I can't take it anymore. I am not a guinea pig." Unfortunately, the doctors could not comply. Ouchi's family, including his wife, sister, and son, held on to hopes that their loved one could survive. They refused to sign DNR paperwork, so doctors started performing cell transplants using his sister's cells. At first, the transplant seemed to temporarily help Ouchi, but he soon spiraled right back down. The amount of radiation in his body killed off all the new cells it came into contact with. It had damaged his chromosomes beyond repair. As a result, each new skin graft went to waste as Ouchi's body could not repair itself enough to hold on to them. Soon, Ouchi's skin would start to melt from his body. The extent of his suffering at this point was extreme. After 59 days in the hospital, Ouchi suffered a heart attack, but he was resuscitated at the request of his family. This was just the first of many times they would have to bring Ouchi back to life. One point, he had over 3 heart attacks in 1 hour. Finally, after 83 days, one final heart attack sent Ouchi over the edge he had been dangling off for weeks. On December 21, 1999, Hisashi Ouchi's heart gave out one last time, and he died. Following Ouchi's death, news of the incident flooded the Japanese media. After a year-long investigation, 6 JCO officials were arrested due to their involvement in the incident. CEO Kenzo Kojishima was fined 500,000 yen as well as a 5-year sentence. The others, including Yutaka Yokokawa, were given sentences of up to 3 years. JCO's reputation was on the line, as the media reported their deliberate sidestepping of safety measures to achieve the demand for nuclear fuel. Eventually, they were stripped of their business license and paid a total of 12.66 billion yen in compensation to the residents affected by the incident. The incident also prompted national nuclear regulatory agencies such as the IAEA to revise their standards, aiming to ensure that facilities adhered to higher safety guidelines. Workplace rules were updated to ensure that nuclear facilities were equipped to handle emergencies effectively, with clear protocols for evacuations and coordination. Stricter guidelines were introduced to protect workers from radiation exposure, including improved training, the use of more enhanced equipment, and regular monitoring to detect potential health risks. Ouchi's death revolutionized workplace guidelines in nuclear facilities, protecting workers' safety against future accidents. Perhaps, if his death never occurred, would nowadays nuclear facilities be just as dangerous as they were during his time? And so in closing, the story of Hisashi Ouchi serves as a reminder of the immense power and danger that comes with scientific advancement. While nuclear technology has brought warmth to many, its errors can darken lives beyond measure. Through no choice of his own, Ouchi became locked in a battle against not just radiation poisoning, but the limits of human endurance as well. That he survived for 83 days in a state medicine had never seen before pushes the boundaries of what we think we know about the human body and spirit. His tragedy spotlights the fragility of our bodies and how quickly normalcy can dissolve into a fight just to survive. In the end, perhaps Ouchi's legacy can be a renewed commitment to ethics, to honoring patient autonomy above all, and to pursue knowledge guided by mercy, not merely might. The story of the man who cried blood, though a difficult one, deserves to be remembered.